This may be too dark. Let me just change that. Action!
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Grudge Report from the SETI Institute. We are going to be talking about the Expanse today, which is why I'm here. We're going to be talking about episode 9, Winnipesaukee, which I definitely did not have to practice several times before we started recording. My name is Margaret. I am a member of the development team at the SETI Institute, and I am a big Expanse fan. And as always, I'm joined by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief science officer at Unistellar. Say hello, Franck.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Before we get into our discussion, I have to mention that we're going to spoil everything in the Expanse, the show, up until episode 9. So if you aren't all caught up, beware. I would recommend hitting pause, getting caught up on the Expanse, and heading back here because we are going to talk about all things Expanse with particular emphasis on the science. So for all of you who have tuned in and are caught up, thank you. We're really excited to chat about this episode. And first things first, Franck was very happy at the beginning of this episode because when Marco is receiving an update on a battle between free Navy ships and I believe some Martian ships, maybe a couple UN too, they mentioned the Trojan asteroids, which Franck loves. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, Franck?
I'm going to talk about it for the entire 30 minutes then, since you mentioned that I love this one.
You do.
So this is, at the beginning of the show, there is a battle, and I mentioned that the battle happened nearby the asteroid Patroclus. Patroclus is a Trojan asteroid. And you probably remember, like 3 or 4 episodes ago, I was mentioning that I was disappointed by the fact that Trojan asteroids or even creepable objects were not even mentioned in the show. Well, finally, we have one. So Patroclus, real name is 617 Patroclus, so it's 617th asteroid discovered. It's been discovered in 1906. And one of the reasons this asteroid is very interesting is because it's a Trojan asteroid located in the L5, if I remember properly, and it's an asteroid which we observe using adaptive optics. And in 2001, we found out that in fact it was not one asteroid, but 2 asteroids, 2 components. Look, I even have a 3D printed of it.
So let's see it. Oh, cool.
So we, after this discovery, we observe this asteroid regularly with adaptive optic system on the Keck telescopes and other, the VLT. We refine the orbit, and we found out that this asteroid is made of 2 components of 90 kilometer diameter, roughly. And they orbit around the center of Mars in 16 hours. If I remember, those are numbers that I don't remember, frankly. So probably someone's going to correct me. Okay. It's 100 kilometers each, yeah, something like that. And what we like is that when we see 2 components like this, by measuring the orbit and knowing the size, we derive the density. And we derived that the density of this asteroid was less than 1, so less than water. And we published this in 2005 in a paper in 2005 in Nature, of the first determination of the density of a Trojan asteroid.
And when you say we, you really mean we, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we, like the team that I lead at the time, we used the Keck laser guide star to do these observations.
Franck did that. He's being modest, but I won't. He did that. He discovered that. That was pretty cool.
So observation is 40 hours, and now I can see that. So the cool part of it is that when we discover something or we refine the orbit or something like that, you can name the second component. So I wrote a proposal to the International Astronomical Union, and we named the second component Menoetius. Menoetius was the father of Patroclus. So in fact, if the show was correct, it should have said there was a battle nearby the asteroid 617 Patroclus Menoetius, because that's its official name now. Because it's a binary system.
One and let them know.
That's all.
Really cool. Yeah. I thought you would appreciate that shout out at the very beginning. I got very excited.
Now people will stop watching it.
Turn it off after that. Well, let's now talk about Earth, because there was a lot of action on Earth. And so to give a little, set the scene, Amos and Peaches, Clarissa, they've hooked up with Eric, who's the crime lord from Baltimore that Amos knows. And the group, they go to the namesake of this episode, Winnipesaukee, which is an actual lake in New Hampshire. It's marketed as the jewel of New Hampshire. And it does look quite pretty in the show. And they go there to find, because they want to find this shuttle that will take them to Luna. And there's a lot of things that go on, but Franck, it just seems odd to me that someone would keep a shuttle. Like, I know rich people like to have their what am I looking for? Like, rich people have bunkers in current time because they're afraid of nuclear war, or, they just have money to spend on things like that. So I understand that the people that live in the mansions might have these shuttles, but is it safe to take off to go to Luna that close to your house? There was a huge explosion when they finally managed to get their shuttle going. It scared me a little bit more than the asteroid impacts. Don't at me in the comments, but it just seemed quite large. So what was happening there?
Yeah, so first of all, the rich people, the wealthy people of this island have a shuttle probably because they want to be able to escape Earth in case of emergency. But there is also an entire ecosystem on Luna. Luna seems to be kind of a place where rich people can go. And probably around Earth, there is also space stations, hotel space stations. So maybe having your own shuttle to travel to those low Earth orbit to be able to see Earth from above and enjoy a casino or whatever they have over there for their luxury. Maybe that's why they have a shuttle. Okay, so then we have a disagreement about the explosion, because we talked about this before. And I think you missed a part here. When they enter in the shuttle and they're being shot by this rent-a-cop, they close a door, remember? And they go through this kind
they're
of
getting
weird...
shot at, correct? They're taking fire, which is why they close the door.
Yeah. And there is and they enter in these tunnels. And those tunnels look very like the tunnel you can see at the bottom of a launch pad. And those tunnels are made to eject the exhaust from the rocket. And there are probably multiple of those tunnels. Generally, there is like 4 of them or even more at the bottom. So when the rockets take off, all the gas, the exhaust, instead of staying stationary at the bottom of the rocket, which can be risky, of course, this gas is ejected on the side, farther away from the pad. And since they closed the door, and I probably did not think about opening the other one, what you can see here is the effect of this exhaust being inside this the launch pad, which is underneath the ground. And on the top of that, the doors stay all closed for a long period of time. So you have an effect of the exhaust plus the pressure. And that's the reason you have this explosion. I will say that in normal case, what you do, you don't leave with your shuttle that quickly. You make sure that all the exhaust tunnels are open and you take off, not in emergency like this, you open the top of the pad to make sure that your rocket doesn't go through it. That's maybe the reason it looks more impressive. And it's also a movie, so it's much more fun to do something like this than to have a normal launch.
That's very true. I think what you're saying is that if you were rich and had a mansion, you would definitely have a lunar shuttle.
Yeah.
In your backyard.
If I were rich and I had the technology existed, I will have a lunar shuttle.
Yes. Well, I brought up the asteroid impact, and I did want to make a call out to, I've got the name right here, Muad'Dib 2288. I've probably mispronounced that, so I apologize. But they left a comment on our last video where we talked about, you did some great calculations and used your simulator, and were questioning whether the asteroids as depicted in the show would really have the impact on Earth, particularly the northeastern US that the show seems to depict. And this individual commented that they are in agreement, that they've read the books, and in the books, everything seems a little bit more catastrophic. And the show hasn't quite nailed that for a lot of people, especially those who are familiar with the books. So you should feel vindicated, Franck. Your calculations check out.
So yeah, Wadip mentioned that it's an asteroid probably made of toxin, and it's also an asteroid which is significantly faster than a normal asteroid. So that probably, and if it lands in the ocean, as I kind of predicted, so that's the reason it looks it's more impressive in terms of the number of energy liberated by the impact, and that's the reason Philadelphia and New York are being affected by the impact, for instance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely a good point. Well, before we leave Earth,
there is something I wanted to say about the launch, which I think is important. Let's go back to the rocket.
Yes. Let's go back to Earth.
I like the scene when Amos enters quickly in the rocket, and when the door closes, he's with this woman who lives in Baltimore. And the first thing he does, as soon as he arrives in the rocket, he lies on the floor. Why? Because he knows that the rocket's going to take off. And when the rocket takes off, you have a lot of G-force, basically. So these G-force are due to the fact that the acceleration of the rocket, the same G-force you feel when you brake or when you accelerate quickly, you feel that as well. So in fact, astronauts in a classical rocket like now feel typically a G-force of 3G, which is 3 times the gravity of Earth. It's a strong gravity. I mean, you feel it, and you need to get used to it. So they have been trained before taking off to be able to handle high G. They wear a G suit, and they all go into this kind of extreme carousel. I don't know how you call that, to get the same amount of G's. So he lies on the floor because he wants to prepare himself. Because if you're standing and you get this IG, you're gonna be crushed and you can break your legs. So he lies on the floor to get to be in a flat, horizontal position, and if he does feel the G. If you get 9G, this is the limit I look online, and if you get 9G, basically your brain stop functioning because there is no more blood in your brain. The blood cannot reach the brain, so you generally faint and lose consciousness. This is the kind of G you can get if you are flying an airplane and here I'm gonna need your help because I don't remember how you call this, the emergency seat. How you call that? You know when?
The emergency eject where you're ejected.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what happens. So you have that many G's if you're
you have a lot of G's in this case. Okay, and then when you so after the acceleration, you reach an area where you basically have what we call entering in space, and in space, you start floating, and that's what you see. You see she died, I think, and she's floating. So only her body starts levitating, and she's floating. And she's not floating, and this is a very common misconception that I also have. She's not floating because there is no gravity. There is still gravity, in fact. And if you are in the International Space Station at 200 miles above the surface, you have a gravity which is 90% the gravity of Earth. And you know that there is a gravity because the International Space Station rotates around Earth because of the gravity of Earth. Same for the geostationary satellites. Same for the moon. They do feel the gravity of Earth. So there is still a gravity. The reason for which you start floating is because you don't have there is no resistance to the gravitational interaction. So there is no structure. There is no counterforce. So the floating is due to that. It's not due to the absence of gravity. It's a myth to say that when you escape the Earth's gravity, in fact, you do not escape the Earth's gravity. You just go further away, such as there is no this reaction to make you stand on the ground and feel the counterforce.
That's really interesting. I did not know that.
Okay, well, that's all for the 0G.
That's all for 0G. Well, gravity is a nice through point to Luna and what's going on Luna, because we can talk about the plot, but there's this really wonderful scene where Avasarala and Delgado are sharing a drink, and she pours the drink, and the liquid, I don't know what you would call it, it kind of floats, like it floats down into the cup, and it holds the shape of the cup. So this is clearly on the moon, where you have more gravity than in Drummer's ship, where last week they spilled water and it just free floats everywhere. But it's not Earth gravity, because it's not the drink is not pouring like it would on Earth. I really like that scene, and I think it probably stuck out to you too.
Yeah, it totally got my attention. I also thought about the scene from the Belter in comparison to this. So the Belter are in the spaceship, so there is no gravity per se. In the case of the moon, you have the gravity of the moon that you feel, and that's it's a sixth of the gravity of Earth. So liquid behave differently because of that. You can see the way the liquid basically flow out of the bottle is different. And that's simply because of the low gravity. And David Pasteur, when he arrived from Earth, mentioned, in fact, that he has a hard time to stand and to walk on the moon because of the low gravity that he feels on the moon. He's not used to it.
Yes, he does make that point. But I have to say, I don't feel bad for David Pasteur, because he's the interim UN head of the UN. I'm blanking on the exact title, but he's calling the shots. And there's a lot of tension on Luna right now, because the UN has blown up Palace Station, correct? So they've taken out a big civilian Belter target. And they are talking about attacking Ceres Station. And they drop a nugget in this discussion that Ceres is home to 3 million, a couple million civilian people, right?
Avasarala mentioned that, in fact, in an argument, saying that if you it's a beautiful moment where she explained how much she hates Marco because he killed her husband. So imagine, like, if you do kill millions of people, there will be like 10 times more that will hate you even more because you killed this family. So she mentioned that Ceres has significantly more people than Palace Station, and she mentioned the number of 1 million people. And I just would like to mention that last week I said that there is probably less than 10 million people on the total Belter. So I may be wrong, but I'm probably not too far away from the real number, because Ceres is a significantly large asteroid. So it's one of the largest asteroids. So that's probably one of the places where we have the biggest station, because that's where you will go first if you want to live on asteroid. You will take the biggest one, where you have some kind of gravity and a lot of resources, and build a station there.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting to think about, and I'm sure there are probably details that I missed in the show, but I know that the UN wants to strike back at the Belters, or Marco specifically, and anyone who's aligned with them. But if the belt is producing resources and Ceres is the largest area where they have the Belter population, it's interesting to me that the UN would think about doing that. And I also thought it was very interesting that David and Delgado and a couple other people who were advocating for the strategy said that Avasarala was being emotional, because to me, not really thinking through and sending a bomb towards a really big Belter station seems like an extremely emotional reaction to what's going on. So I thought I agree with you, is like a very interesting and well done exchange between the different sides.
Yeah, it's interesting how sometimes the military people think that the spirit of revenge they have is not emotional. It's purely emotional, because it's totally not rational in this case.
Yes.
Maybe something we can mention about the Ceres station, which is slightly related, but this week, if you read newspaper, you probably heard about this potential space station, floating space station that we could have around Ceres, and into which millions of people could live. So that's a paper that's been submitted, and it's available on AstroPH. I will
throw
show.
it up. If the Expanse is coming true, let's just hope there's no proto-molecule for real out there.
It's a paper done by Pekka Janunen, who works in Helsinki in Finland. And he has this kind of idea of a mega satellite constellation around Ceres. I recommend you have a look at this paper if you're interested. It's kind of an original idea because instead of having an array of small telescope, a small station around, they will be together on a disk, standing and rotating, so they create a gravity. And there will be some kind of solar panel or mirrors that will send light coming from the sun into those stations, so they will be able to collect enough light to produce energy or to grow crops and food. So it's not a station in Ceres, it's a station around Ceres with a very interesting structure. We call that a mega satellite. That's all I can say about it. I mean, that's building something like this is something challenging. We never launched a human being beyond low Earth orbit, and here we are talking about sending someone who can take 4 to 8 years to reach this, and then we have to find the resources to build these mega satellites and know how to operate it. But so we will need to improve our way to travel through space to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I think
it's something I forgot to mention that one of the reasons they want to have a station in orbit around Ceres like this at the equator of Ceres is because they think that they can use the material from Ceres to build the station as well, and he has the concept of a space elevator to get the material from Ceres to the station.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I have not taken a look at that, but I definitely want to. And it will be up on the screen for anyone else who's interested. Well, since we're in Belter territory, I want to talk about my favorite Karinas Drummer. And I'm a little disappointed, Franck, that you did not mention that I'm wearing Karinas Drummer inspired eye makeup that was hastily put on after a meeting.
I was waiting for you to mention a name, and then I would have made the connection. But
yes, Karinas.
But I do like it. I do like it, definitely.
She's always serving up very intense looks, and I love her eye makeup.
In the 80s, we have this group called Eurythmics. No? Okay, well, she was wearing the same kind of makeup almost all the time.
I have to look her up now. I have to look that band up. But I think they're setting, like I said last time, and I might be proven wrong in the season finale next week, but I think they're setting up something quite big for Karinas Drummer. In this episode, she gets this nugget that Naomi may still be alive, which is something that she doesn't know until late in the episode. And the one thing that I'm a little disappointed in, I will say, and feel free to disagree with me, I'd love to have this discussion, is the writers are teeing up this choice that I think Karinas is going to have to make between choosing Naomi, who's a very dear friend, and choosing sort of like this Naomi who represents the Belters and the group of people that are anti-Marco, and Karinas' other choice is her family, her Belter family, that she, it's very clear from the show that they don't discuss it very much, that she's in a polyamorous relationship with her crew, and they're all considered family. And one of the misses, I think, is that we haven't really spent that much time with her family. And I know intellectually that she's very close with them, but I don't feel very attached to any of them. So they're setting up this choice that we're supposed to feel is really hard for Karinas, but I don't feel that yet. So I'm interested to see what happens. I don't know if you have commentary, Franck, or if that was
it's true that probably the book is different, I will say, because books are easier, can more easily connect people and stories like relationship. In a movie, which is a science fiction movie, people don't really look for seeing connection between families and between Oksana and Drummer and the rest of the polyamorous relationship. And it's also difficult to describe that in a movie. I mean, for multiple reasons. So we have some kind of hint about it, and that's all. And it's true that because we have that, we don't really relate to the decision she has to take between choosing a family or choosing Naomi. And that's disappointing, but let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens. And I think we should talk about Naomi to close things off, because I believe this episode was pretty much bookended by Naomi. We see her in the beginning and then we end with her. So she's up to something on this spaceship. I think at first we're supposed to think that she has somehow produced water. Her suit is kind of sweating water, it seems like.
Yes, so something I was thinking about last week when we were talking about her is how long she's going to be able to survive in this spaceship, knowing that there seems to have no food, neither water. I mean, you die of lack of water in a few days, so she needs to drink somewhere. And the beginning of the show, we see her coming back from the low pressure area, the semi-vacuum area of the spaceship, into the one which is at the pressure of Earth. And there is water popping up on the screen, on the flat area of the spaceship. And she used this, she leaked this water to drink, basically. So as soon as I've seen that, I was thinking, oh, I'm sure Margaret's going to ask me what's going on here. So I have to pause and to start thinking about it. And frankly, I don't have a clear answer yet. Somehow this water is coming from the vacuum area. So maybe there is no vacuum there. There is something producing water, or maybe there is some of the atmosphere of the area where she lives is going toward this vacuum area. And when she's coming back, what happens is that the pressure increases. So if you have vapor of water in the vacuum area, when you cross and you go through the airlock and you go into this high pressure atmosphere, so we're looking at the diagram here of the water, the phase diagram of water, and basically when you cross at 20 degrees Celsius, a pressure of 1 kilopascal, which is 1% the pressure of Earth's atmosphere, the water which was vapor will become liquid. And that's what happened, probably. There is a change of pressure, and the change of pressure transform the vapor into liquid. One on this screen specifically, because probably it's a flat area and the water can stay there, so she used it to drink. But then, maybe you want to mention what we see at the end of the show.
Yes, and make sure that I'm getting all the details right, because we see that, and then there's a very interesting film framing device where she's looking at the mask that she has, I suppose, for her suit, and then she catches sight of the ship's radar, I'm guessing, or something to the effect of radar, and she is happy because there's nothing on it, and then all of a sudden she sees the screaming Firehawk, which we know is Bobby and Alex coming to rescue her. And so she proceeds to become really upset. And then she also, there's something else going on. Like there's some other material that she sees, something catches her eye, and then she goes back into the vacuum part of the ship. And I have no idea what's going on.
What she does, she looks at her screen, the same way there used to be water. There were water at the beginning of the show. She touched it, and then she touched her finger, like if she felt something, and she looks if this thing is on the finger, or maybe there is nothing, I don't know. And then she crosses. So, I don't know. And I really don't want anybody to ruin this for me, so nobody put any comments on this, please. On the
It's probably explained in the book, right? Yeah. So no book spoilers. I'm going to throw out my very unresearched, off the top of my head idea, which is probably really wrong, and you're going to tell me why it's wrong. But maybe she'll use the water somehow to short circuit something. I don't know. It seems like she's not convinced that she's done enough with her message, or done enough to prove that she's alive and that she's in a trap, which is, I think, what she was trying to do by modifying the message. So she's going to I think the only way that she can really get people to understand is if she can turn the ship on, which I don't really think is possible, or if she could turn off the message somehow, or if she could do something to the ship, like expel something or just do something, you know, I don't know, like
an
release
explosion.
trash. Yeah, blow it up so that it's clear that something's going on in there. And maybe water is involved somehow. I don't know, but
yeah. The thing is, I don't know if looking at the scene, and I look at multiple time, I don't see in the scene if she sees something or she doesn't see anything. It's kind of unclear. So I can't give you any explanation about this. And probably next week we're gonna feel very stupid because I'm gonna say I can't believe I didn't think about that. But that's fine.
That's the beauty of the show, right? You don't want to watch something where you know exactly what's going to happen. And it'll probably make scientific sense because the Expanse is very good at that. So any other thoughts, parting conclusions?
No, I like the scene of the memorial.
Yeah.
The moment where Savarella basically sent from a cell phone, whatever this thing that they use, this device. She sent the name of her husband on it, and he stayed floating into this electronic memorial, the digital memorial, they call that. I think it's a beautiful scene, and I kind of like that. And that's all. She's back in power, so it's going to be very interesting.
Back in power, vote of no confidence. So we're seeing her, the once and future queen, as Delgado called her, which I thought was perfect. And yeah, I thought the memorial scene was very touching too. It really demonstrated the human impact of, like, you know, we see the catastrophe on Earth, but to see the survivors on Luna and the guilt and the sadness there, I thought that scene did a very good job with that. So, well, thank you for tuning in. Franck and I love talking about the Expanse, so we're happy that anybody joins. So thank you very much. We'll be back next week to talk about the finale, I believe, of season 5 of the Expanse. We are a product of the SETI Institute, which if you've been watching, you know, but if you haven't been watching, the SETI Institute is a nonprofit research institution whose mission is to understand the nature and origin of life in the universe. And because we're a nonprofit, we rely on donations. So if you're interested in donating, there's a link below. And if you're interested in knowing about the SETI Institute or getting updates on when the next Grudge report goes out, there are tons of links below as well. So pick your poison there, and we will see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.